The path is your own journey.
Right.
The initiate has to go on its own journey. And you can't take nothing with you. And you at the goddamn crossroads. And the crossroads is, are you ready to go to the next level?
Yeah.
Because guess what? I can't take you to the next level. You got to make that decision.
Imagination.
Imagination means the faculty or action of forming new ideas, or images or concepts of external objects not present to the senses.
All right, so let's get into the imagination and how important our imagination is. I feel that our imagination is our most important faculty as spiritual beings. And when we lose touch with our imagination, then we become more dense. We become more reliant and dependent on the third dimensional realm, dependent on society, dependent on the culture, dependent on someone else's ideas on how life should be and things like that. And we start to lack the ability to create for ourselves. We lack the ability to have new thoughts and original thoughts and just be individuals and just be unique. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we live in a world that has so many different influences and so many different impressions and agendas out here to steer our imagination in a direction that it wants to steer it, right? And a lot of us, I'm talking about collectively, have lost our ability to just imagine in a new way, imagine a new thought, imagine a new reality, imagine ourselves in a new space, in a different space. We got to understand that our imagination is our ability to move through multiple dimensions simultaneously. We could be sitting next to somebody and daydreaming. They might have to snap us out of it because we have gone into our imagination. So one of my favorite movies, it's called What Dreams May Come, with one of the greatest actors, one of the greatest comedians, in my opinion, Robin Williams. I grew up on Robin Williams, watching Peter Pan, watching Mrs. Doubtfire, and things like that. So when I look at the movie What Dreams May Come, he dies in this movie. And when he dies, he goes to what we would call heaven, right? And he has a guide there. Cuban Gooding Jr. played his guide, right? And he was showing him how to operate his heaven. And he was telling him it's all about your imagination. It's all about how you see things, how you create things, and your belief in them. So we can't escape the fact that we live through our belief systems. What we think is real to us. So if we think what come on the news is real, then it becomes real fear. If we worry about the monkeypox and we worried about, somebody has infiltrated your imagination and has you basically watching a TV screen on a channel that you didn't choose. You feel me? And I always knew this, and a lot of us always knew this as children, And this is one of the reasons I had trouble going to school too, because it's like I would be daydreaming, I would be thinking about so many things that was so much more interesting, because I easily noticed in the 3rd or 4th grade that they keep giving me the same repetitive work. It's the same formulas, and not only that, I recognized that it was the way they was trying to enforce a different perception in us. It's like, it's not about what they was teaching us. It was more about how they was teaching us to learn shit, how they was teaching us to take things in and see things, right? And I had a problem with that because it didn't correspond with my imagination, because I always had a healthy imagination. I was the kid that while everybody was playing in the front yard, while everybody was, running up and down the street, while the drug dealers was selling drugs, people was getting murdered, people was fighting and things like that. It was horrific in the front yard. But then I would go in the backyard and I would build me a tree house. I would pretend I was a ninja. I would have initiations and make up things like that. And my friends that would come back there with me, they will also have to jump into their imagination just by being with me. And I understand that now in these days, just how important the imagination is and just how dangerous the imagination can be. Especially when you are not cultivating any type of relationship with it for real. If you let the world make you feel like you silly or something just by entertaining your imagination. And when we talking about imagination, let's understand this. We're talking about the ability to create a new thought, the ability to move throughout time and space and go into different dimensions simultaneously when we're talking about our imagination, right? So if we allow our imagination to be infiltrated and invaded with thoughts, with imaginations that only serve the purpose of the government agenda or whatever, just something that doesn't serve our authentic self. We'll never get to the bottom of who we are if we don't have access to our imagination. If we allow our imagination to be bullied and pushed around by the ideas of whoever, for that matter. You feel what I'm saying? So like I said, I would be in the backyard creating new realms and shit because I was always in that space, always in my imaginative faculties. Whether I was playing with toys, action figures and shit like that, I would get them dialogue through my mind and things like that. And what I found is that our imagination is where we reside at, is where we live at, whether we are aware of it or not. So like I said, if we allow our imagination to be hijacked and we paying attention to the news all day or paying attention to what the world want to do or whatever the case may be all day, then we're going to live our lives from that perspective. So we'll be the type of people that walk around in fear and we do what we told and we value what might not even truly be of value to us. We gain our sense of self-esteem and shit like that from a place that is not really us. Because I even realized, like the last year or two, like I really just, it's certain things about this world that I just don't really find interesting. There's certain things that a lot of people want and feel like they need and feel like if they don't have it, they're not a man or they're not a woman and things like that. And I find that I naturally don't like these things. I don't have a desire for them. Even socializing it. When I really sit by myself and really jump into my own imagination, meaning I'm not allowing the influences around me and things like that to dictate my imagination, I realize that, yeah, I don't have a desire to really socialize unless I'm socializing with a person that has a wide range of imagination. You feel me? Because now we can explore. A lot of people get in relationships and things like that, and I'd be like, what are y'all doing? Because we can always build as the world tells us to build. We could always do what the world tells us to do, and we could find some stability in that. We could find some independence in that. You know, like they tell you, the American dream: get a car, a house, a dog, have 2 kids, and pay your rent and pay your mortgage and all that shit. And that's an idea that benefits a certain system, a certain society, a certain group of people. It don't necessarily benefit you. It's just what you've been taught and what you've been told and how you've been taught to see yourself as an adult or as a human being or even when you were a child. So, you know, we just had a millionaire from Bed, Bath, Body Works, however y'all say that shit. Bed, Bath, and Beyond, whatever, right? He just jumped off the 18th floor of the Jenga building, right? 3 days after the stock dropped. 3 days after the stock dropped on Bed, Bath, and Beyond, so their shares was getting real low to the point where it's inevitable that they're just going to shut down, period, and cease to exist. So I gotta ask myself, like, what would make a person just say, fuck it, I'm just going to hop off this building and see if I could grow wings? And they might switch the story up and say he jumped off and all that kind of shit. But these type of things happen every day. People allow their life to get overwhelm them so much that they get into a suicidal space. And I'm going to do a separate talk on suicide because a lot of people don't want to touch on that. A lot of people want to look over that and act like they never had suicidal thoughts and things like that, and they never question their existence. But yeah, like I said, that's for another time. But I asked myself, what would make him jump off the building? He still got millions of dollars or whatever the case may be. But I see he bought into an idea of what and who he is through that company, through his money, through his status and things like that. So it's not about just money. It's about us caring so much about how other people imagine us. And this is enforced by the world. So we care about what other people going to think when they all the way over there by themselves about how we are, who we are, what we represent, how important we are and shit like that. We allow ourselves to buy into that, right? So we even care about how we live in someone else's mind. So a lot of people spend their life and spend their time trying to impress others. Why do we try to impress? Keyword, impress others. Because we want to impress a certain type of image onto their imagination so that we're seen in a certain light. And people go to extremes to do these things. And like I said, because the world enforces this becomes the norm. So that's why we have trends and fads and you know, challenges and things everybody participate in. But yeah, back to the guy from that jumped off the building. So he had to get to a point that he couldn't see himself in a different light. He was so worried about how everybody would look at him and say, wow, you know, you falling off or your business is gone or it's going downhill or whatever the case may be. So, and this is just my personal opinion, but like I said, these type of events happen every day. People allow themselves to be so invested in the ideas of others, so invested in the perception of others, that's the only way they're able to see themselves. So he didn't want to show his face anymore. He didn't want nobody to be looking at him and attach that thought to him that, wow, you're a failure. Wow, you're moving downhill. Wow, you don't have it like you used to anymore. He lacked the ability to jump into his own imagination and create a new idea, create a new space, create a new realm. And it takes time because our imagination is in higher dimensions. It's in more subtle dimensions. And that's why it's important to observe what you think, observe what you're imagining, observe how you see yourself and how you feel about yourself. It's very important because you're constantly having these things impressed upon you through everybody and everything around you, especially those that you deem to be close to you, those that you deem to be important to you, or whatever is important to you. You take that into your imagination and you make a note of it. And it dictates how you move about on a day-to-day basis. So you might even just be in the mirror, just getting ready to get dressed or whatever. And the first thing come to your mind is everybody you're going to see at work, everybody you're going to see at school, everybody that you're going to see outside. So you're not even dressing for yourself. You're not even being unique. You might be, oh, I'm gonna put this logo on because I know this logo and this brand gets a certain reaction. It gets a certain amount of respect. It's hot. It's fire. It's what's new. It's what everybody want. It's what the ladies want to see. It's what the guys want to see. You start to take all of these things into account. How you gonna do your hair and shit like that. And you could become a prisoner to your own imagination. Because it's the key to life. So back to the movie, What Dreams May Come, he was being trained on, how to just utilize his own imagination and create a new world and not be creating the things that he was told to create, not creating things that was impressed upon him and forced upon him. He saw that, wow, when we die, we go to that realm that we spend the most time in, our imagination, and how whatever that is, it's like they say, you make your bed, now you got to lay in it. So when we talking about doing spiritual work and resolving a lot of the traumatic experiences that we've been through, some shit that we can't even remember, right? We talking about imagination. We're talking about being able to see further, being able to even travel back to those spaces and get a new perspective on what transpired, get a new perspective on how that affected you. I'm a person that I never saw my father. I never grew up with him. I still don't know him, and whatever the case may be. So I had to use my imagination as my guide, and I'm thankful for that. I always tell people, they be like, oh man, you never met your father and shit like that. I'd be like, it's totally fine. Trust me. My mission was never to go through that. And maybe it might happen one day if he's still alive. Maybe I might meet him. But the thing is, I had my imagination as my guide. So, like I said, I'm from the trenches. So it's a lot of people that only could see the corner. They only could see selling drugs. They only could see gangbanging. They only could see even just going to school and getting a degree or whatever the case may be. They only could see life from a multiple choice question type of perspective. So they just doing picking A, B, C, or D. And I was able to imagine the E, the F, the open-ended answer. I was able to look at something and say, well, it has to be more. And then as I went on in my life playing ball and shit like that, I was shown more. So I was able to come back to my same residence and still put myself in different spaces in different times and imagine the future and imagine how it could be and add on to my imagination and make the world of myself bigger. You know how they tell you, think bigger, think better, think different. You can't do that when you're constantly taking references from media outlets, books. Ain't nothing wrong with books. There's nothing wrong with reading. That's a great place to start and use for your imagination, because especially reading, because now you could picture the characters, you could give them certain attributes and things like that. So reading is a great place to start and stay in using your imagination. It's a great exercise. That's another thing I always did as a child. I always read books. I never had a problem reading. I never had a problem writing. I always fucked with things like poetry and shit like that, because these are things that your imagination is needed for. So things like school, things that that's repetitive, that's over and over and over again, I understood like, damn, it's just like pretty much a concentration camp. There's pretty much no wiggle room for me to be myself or for me to find out who I was. And me being the type of person watching movies like Peter Pan and Mrs. Doubtfire and things that just ignite your imagination, me being drawn to things like that, especially me, I'm just an old soul, period. Even as a child, I felt like I was like 30, 40 when I was like 10. So, and I know a lot of y'all feel like that, like y'all been here before, because we have, you know what I'm saying? You feel like you probably 20, 30 years old, you probably feel like you 80 years old and shit like that. And that's due to the imagination too. Like, I've spent much time traveling, so much time building, so much time even just wishing and hoping and just wanting to go on a new journey, not wanting my life to be composed to a form of reality that's just what it is. Like, you just can't tell me this is just all there is. Like, I gotta go create more. I gotta go create new. You know how they say recreate yourself and shit like that? You gotta go to your imagination. Even me speaking and things like that, like, a lot of people don't know this version of me. And furthermore, when you're dealing with people, right, and you're dealing with people that lack imagination, it's hard for you to exercise your imagination with those people. You can't go on no trip with them. You can't go on no ride with them. You can't build anything. You can't make something out of nothing. That's what your imagination is, your ability to make something out of nothing. Even people that are in prison that might not never come home, they can lock their body, but they can't lock their mind unless you allow that to happen. You got to get consent for your imagination to be taken away from you, so to speak. Though, like I said, we do go through traumatic things in our lives, and it's certain things we don't have control over when we are younger, right? So it's certain impressions that we just have on us that make us who we are today. But we don't want to get stuck in our ways, you know what I mean? You don't want to be the old grumpy man. You don't want to be the old grumpy woman or the old victim or whatever the case may be, because that shit happened to you in your childhood. We have to learn how to, like I said, travel to them spaces over and over and over again and see them from different perspectives and spend time there until we become the victor of the story and not the victim. So much shit that happened to me, like, it don't faze me. And it did at one time. But the more I confronted it, the more I used my imagination to go back to them spaces, the more I expanded, the more I grew, the more I seen different perspectives, and the more free I became. Because your spirit just want to be free. Your spirit just want to be a blank canvas for you to draw on. But you got to use your own paint. You got to use your own paintbrushes. And it's cool to get ideas from others and expound on that. That's all we doing. Like they said, it's really nothing new under the sun. But we all have, what word I'm looking for? Unique perspectives. We never see the things the same way. We could be sitting in the same car and we still ain't gonna see the road the same way. We still not gonna see the clouds the same way. We still not gonna see the ground the same way. You feel what I'm saying? And that too is due to what we've been through, how we see ourselves, how we imagine ourselves. So even when I'm working with children and things like that, and especially with basketball, I'm always teaching basketball. And of course, you're dealing with a child and they have certain limitations within themselves and their imagination. So they imagine themselves as one thing, and it's your job as a parent or a coach or whatever the case may be to take them on a ride through their own imagination and show them there's more. Show them, oh, you could build more and you could go further and you could go higher. You could go deeper. You don't have to just be the version of yourself that you've been told to be. You don't just have to be the version of yourself that you imagine yourself today. You could just change that at a split second. Like, when did it become whack to, like, create? When did it become whack to, like, imagine? You know. And when we talking about the imagination, we talking about the unseen realms, the unseen things. So it's your ability to imagine things that don't exist, things that have never been in this day and time. You feel me? So that's why all the innovators and the pioneers and the people that invent things, they go down in history. A lot of people will call them a genius. And we are all genius when we follow in our imagination, when we follow in our intuition. Our imagination and our intuition work hand in hand. So when we lose the imagination, we lose touch with our intuition. And that's what we're going through on a collective scale today. We live in a world where everybody bought into one idea, everybody bought into what so-called normal is, and that's how everybody move about. And the more they practice that, the more they push and suppress their own imaginative faculties to the side. So it's kind of being like, all right, oh no, you already got a picture drawn for me? I'll take that here, but you can have my paintbrush and my paint and everything, and just let somebody else just do it for you. And then you have to deal with the results, the repercussions, the circumstances and consequences of that shit. So I see in this world, it's only a few of us that still have access to our imagination, or still had a conscious, we still conscious of the fact that we can create anew, that we can have a new thought, that we can see ourselves different, that we could build something different, that we can actually go inside ourselves and pretend, go inside ourselves and imagine things and really experience them inside our imagination. You could think of how good your mother food tastes and damn near taste it. You could think of being on a beach, and if you really meditate and you really get into it and really get relaxed, you'll be there. To be honest, most things are better in the imagination than they are in real life, especially in this world we living in, because everybody's putting out a certain type of image anyway. So you meet a person and they don't have all these 15 filters on, or they internet confidence is not there. You wonder, like, damn, like, it's kind of like your existence was better in my imagination than it is in real life. And that's what they really pretty much tricked us into doing in this society right here, in this culture that we live in. They tricked us into giving our energy to an image outside of us. You feel me? And that's not built from within. So we sitting up here trying to carve ourselves and mold ourselves and make ourselves into a certain type of image that is acceptable by our peers, our family, environment, community, so on and so on. Instead of taking a chance on being the weird one, taking a chance on being eccentric and unique, and being the only one that do what you do, how you do it, regardless of what anybody say, and being free. That's what freedom is. The ability to imagine, the ability to have new ideas, the ability to create anew. And that's all spiritual work is. And of course it comes with feelings, emotion. These are things that even more impress on your imagination. So as you think about stuff, the more you put emotion behind it, the more real it becomes, for better or for worse. I always tell kids, like, yo, I say, go to a time when you was feeling confident. Like, it's always something that we do well. So go to a place that you was feeling confident in, and bottle that feeling up and take that and put that towards whatever you're doing now. And it's very possible. Very, very much possible. But when we utilize our imaginations just to orchestrate some premeditated lifestyle or premeditated speech or whatever the case may be, dependent on what the reception of that is going to be, then we lost already. We could never be real. We could never be in a moment. We could never truly present ourselves as we are. And a lot of that comes from our imagination being filled with shame and guilt and things like that. And that's by design. That's the war that we in spiritually. The war is on the imagination. Because once they lock your imagination down, then it ain't nothing you could do. They know it ain't nothing you could do. They know there's nothing else that you could create. You're only going to create what they want you to create. And that's why when you look around, everybody got the same clothes on. Everybody got the same shoes on. Everybody pretty much agree that left is left and right is right. Time is time. And everybody agree on the limitations of this third dimension that we live in. You got to understand, it's beings in higher spiritual places, right? That live, exist, and feed off your ignorance of how important the faculty of your imagination is. And this is why you will have kids, and then the first thing you feed them is what was fed to you. You don't even hardly give them a chance to come up to their own conclusions about what life is really about for them. Let's imagine for a second that if everybody was able to come to their own conclusion about who they are, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying you don't teach a child, but let's teach the children to critically think. Let's teach the children to not be so dependent on the thoughts of others, not be so dependent on the ideas of others. So that you're not walking through a world where you just grabbing all the shit that they tell you that's going to hold you up, and that's going to make you acceptable and stable. You know what I mean? And furthermore, it just make for a whack individual. You ever met somebody and ain't really shit to them? It's because they don't spend no time in their own imagination. They shit hijacked. So they only know how to look at you one way. They only know how to experience things in one way, from one perspective, from one light. And it keeps them limited spiritually. Some people don't even know how to look at spirituality. They look at it like religion. They think it's some shit that, even people that consider themselves spiritual, they think it's buying candles and doing some rituals or some shit like that. Nah, your spirituality is personal to you. This is another thing I want to make sure everybody clear on. It's whatever you say it is. It's whatever you call it. Because your subconscious mind is going to speak to you through the language that you understand. So, because on a day-to-day basis, my subconscious mind is constantly guiding me, constantly nudging me through numbers, through music, through the people that I love that surround me, through the animals and birds and shit like that. It's because my mind is open. And y'all really got to watch the movie What Dreams May Come. And you probably ain't watching it in a long time if you already saw it. But we got to get back to the colorful space. Where's the color in life? You feel me? We too busy imagining ourselves as successful in one way. A whole bunch of money, a nice corporation, and then I should feel fulfilled. A marriage and shit like that. But like I said, you got a guy jumping off the 18th floor of a building because he can't stomach how others will imagine him, because they can only see him in a one-dimensional way. To the point, a lot of people, you get a certain amount of money, you get a certain amount of success in this world right now, and as we can see it, a lot of rappers and shit getting killed. The world we live in right now, having that, it almost dehumanizes you. People don't think you got feelings no more. People don't think you human no more. Depending on if your stock dropped, just like the guy that jumped off the building, that's depending on how people gonna start to view you. And that's the pressure that those of us that walk our unique path, those of us that imagine a new world and help create this new world, create new perspectives, have something to share, something to give that don't just come out of book, that don't just come off the news, that don't just come off how our family taught us. Those of us that do that, we get looked at weird. It's cool. It's cool. You gotta be able to take that shit in stride. Your reward is that you get to live in your imagination. You get to create from your imagination. You get to be original. You get to be authentic. And it always go back to the same shit. It always go back to your ability to be the observer of what's coming in. What's influencing you? What impressions are impressed upon you? That's really what it's all about. So when we look at the world that we live in, right? Like I said, this is a world that has agreed on many limitations. A world that has agreed on the idea of poverty, the idea that rent should be this much, and war and shit like that. You feel what I'm saying? We have normalized these things in our minds collectively. Because if we didn't, we would be living in a new world. Because we are the creators of this world. We gotta understand that. And this go back to like the Matrix. Same shit Morpheus told Neo in the Matrix. He showed him a battery. He said, this is what they trying to make you, a battery for their agenda. So they're going to use your creative faculties to create the fucked up world that you see around you. And the more you put your emotions into that, the more you put your feelings into that, and the more you allow your imagination to be used to create that, that's the what you're going to see. And that's what we're going to call that real. We saying it's real because it's right here. We could touch it. We could see it happening every day and shit like that. But in reality, which is really your imagination, which is the crazy part, and your imagination, that shit ain't real. Because it's things that I used to do that I no longer do. It's things I used to give my energy to that I no longer give my energy to. And in my world, it ceased to exist. I just now, a couple weeks ago, was in a gas station, right? And this guy walked in, you know, on the hip hop shit, had the drill music playing. And he just jumped right in front of me, basically. Me and this other guy just jumped right in front of us, like, yo, all on some loud shit. Yo, get this. Like, just totally just on some disrespectful shit, right? And in a split second, and this is why I always say, when we talking about the Akashic records and we talking about wisdom and shit like that, wisdom and stupidity and ignorance come in a split second. So in a split second, I had the choice of starting a confrontation. Like, yo, what the fuck is you doing? How you hopping in front of me and things like that? That was the old version of me. And I did feel it. I did feel triggered. I was like, damn. And I wound up walking up to the counter and getting my stuff and just like forcing my way to getting my shit because I was next. You feel me? But I lightened the load of that altercation because I imagined what could have happened, what could have transpired. I imagine what's the possibilities that could come from this. 9 times out of 10, if a person coming in with that type of energy, I know they're not trying to get an understanding. They actually probably trying to get into an altercation or don't care about life or can't imagine life in another way, right? So I have to be able to, like a driver, think for me and this weak ass spirit that came in front of me, right? So instead of me allowing my ego to say, oh, I'm offended now, let's get into some shit, I was able to think about my family. I was able to think about things and responsibilities that I have, people that love me and shit like that. I was like, I don't need to be getting into nothing in this gas station right now. Even though this person is possessed by just being disorderly or being violent or whatever the case may be, I don't have to subscribe to that. I don't have to agree to those terms and conditions because I could see more than this person. Evidently, this person got a small perspective and a small view on the world. And that's the type of shit we have to be able to do in real time. Because I'm not perfect. I'm still from the hood. I'm still not playing about myself. I'm still not playing about my family. So it's like, I don't play disrespect too. That's one thing. I don't play disrespect. And I be having to be careful when I say that. because I be reinforcing that in my own subconscious mind. So when some shit like that pop off, I be having my subconscious mind say, yo, you don't play disrespect, yo, so handle that. You feel what I'm saying? So I have to be careful of how I even view disrespect. So I was able to, in a split second, to see that person and say, oh, he don't got no respect for himself. That has nothing to do with me. Let me move on with my day. This is the difference between you seeing somebody getting shot at a gas station or a camera and making it home. You get what I'm saying? Just like when I was in the hood, just like when I was around certain people and around certain circumstances, I always was a little bit like, all right, I ain't gonna go that way because my intuition telling me that ain't right for me or this don't fit me and shit like that. I see a bigger world for me in the future. It's the reason why I'm here right now to even speak. It's the reason why this channel even exists. Being able to allow my imagination to be free. Being able to understand how precious your imagination is. You can't imagine, you can't live. And when I say live, I mean live in a real way. Live in a world of infinite possibilities, because that's what your imagination is. The world, the thing they call quantum now, they're calling it the quantum realm. Or people talking about it's the spiritual realm. It's your imagination. People talking about heaven. It's how you're going to imagine it. That's why people be like, oh, I died and I really saw Jesus, because they went to their imagination. That's who their Savior is, and they really saw Jesus. They really saw Allah, how they pictured him. A lot of people say they saw Jesus. They probably saw like the white Jesus hanging on a picture at their grandmother's house. It's the imagery. That's all you see. That's why they constantly showing you certain images, giving you certain music, giving you certain TV shows, putting celebrities and things like that in certain positions so that you can imagine yourself in these positions, so that you can identify these archetypes as yourself and recreate that world and not create a world of your own. Not have no drip, not really have no sauce. You ain't got no game to give because you just playing the game. You feel what I'm saying? So you got to guard your imagination. It's all you got.